So this is an example of a hat that I'm currently going to make a border on. I started on the back here and I picked up stitches along. It is kind of hard and it's not really comfortable when you're doing this with the cable. But one thing that I kind of found that helps is I'll do like a straight piece, and then here I'll pull out the needle. I'll kind of do like a loop, and then I'll do another long piece, and then I'll pull out a loop here, do a long piece, and now I'm onto this portion here that I can kind of do as a long piece. So I'll just show you an example of what I do. So I pull out the needle, I make a loop like this, and then I'll be putting on my stitches like so, and there will be this loop that's just left over. And then when I'm done with this section, I'll pull this through and it will look like this. So when you are doing this technique on ribbing, you basically work the crochet hook into each purl stitch and knit stitch, and then when you pull through the other end, when you're poking in on a purl stitch, you're poking through, you want to try to hit the braid here and kind of hit in the same, or go through the same area so that you have a straight line and it's not like a wavy line. So this is what it would look like. So with this hat, there's two things to note. So I have like a braid here on the side, and then I have a different type of end over here. This is like my cast on end. And so the technique for this side and this side here will be a little bit different. But the braid kind of goes all the way down here. So here's what I'm gonna do. You need a crochet hook. It's a little bit awkward to do this with a camera in front of you, but I will do my best. So as you can see here, there is a braid here at the end, but you want to hook into this braid. So this is basically where you're gonna go, is right in here. So as you can see, this is kind of what it would look like. Okay, so then I'm gonna pull through a loop like so, and then insert my knitting needle like that. And then I'm going to go into the next one. So. As you kind of get along with it, you will figure out the best way that works for you. And you kind of want to make sure that you have the same amount of distance between your stitches that you pick up. So I'll just do a couple more. Oops. Yeah, it is kind of awkward for me to hold my work in this angle. But as you can see here, I'm grabbing on that braid right there, see? So you're not grabbing it from this end, you are grabbing from here. You'll just work along the edge like this. The braided part is a little bit easier. Oops. So it's gonna start looking like that. And then this is just a loop I'm gonna have. When you get to like this weird, awkward corner piece, you'll kind of transition through and you might just, yeah, try to pick up some stitches to make it look even. You could poke into this braid here. And then instead of poking into this purl, I'm gonna start into, looks like the braid kind of continues over here. So then I'm looking at where's the best spot for me to kind of hook in. So I'll just do this one. And then now we're on to our next part of the braid. And you want to cast on your stitches all to kind of be the same tension. You don't want like half your stitches to be too loose and then the other half be too tight. You kind of try to be consistent. But as you can see here, I'm going in like this. That's why it's important to have a straight edge when you are knitting, because it makes it very easy to pick up stitches when you have a nice braid to follow. Should look like that with a loop. We're getting to the end here. We'll do one more into the braid, and then the braid ends. Oops. Okay, so now I'm at the end, and this is what it would look like. It creates this like beautiful looking stitch. And as you can see here, we're moving on to the ribbed edge, which is a little bit more trickier because you kind of have to flip your work to kind of check where you're going. So on this side, when you're working into a knit stockinette stitch, you want to poke through. You want to be consistent where you poke through. I'm poking through here at the very end of the braid, and when I poke through on the other side, I'm hitting the purl side over there. Before we do that, I would recommend pulling out your wire and then doing that loop again, because then it's easier when you're turning a corner to cast on. So we'll go back here, go through here, pull a loop. We'll insert our needle. Okay, so when you are moving on from a knit stitch to the purl, you want to poke through the purl, and on the other side it's going to be a knit stitch, and you want the crochet hook to hit on the other side where you just did this one. So when I poke through, you kind of want to flip your work as you're poking through, and you want to end up about so into that braid. That will give you a nice straight and consistent line. Okay, now we're back to a knit stitch, So we're going to be inserting here. And now I'm on a purl stitch. I'm not gonna look on the other side as I'm going, making sure I get into the braid. Oops. A lot harder to do it when I'm holding it in front of the camera. Okay, see that? Put it on your needle. Okay, that's basically the hardest part. You just keep going. It's kind of slow, but you kind of get a hang of it and it gets a little bit faster. I would also, like, if you get a little bit excited and you go, make sure you look back and everything looks consistent. If you have like a weird wave, I would recommend pulling out some stitches and redoing that end, because you want a beautiful straight line. When you get to this end, we're gonna start knitting just in the regular stockinette stitch. So when I get to that part, I will check back in. Okay, so I got to the very end. I went around my work and I picked up stitches. Now you're gonna go in rounds. Feel free to add a stitch marker here to kind of show you where your row starts. You do have this tail that you could use as your stitch marker or your marker to show you where you began your work, and then you could also count your rows to make sure you have 8. And then I would recommend like pushing this needle in a little bit, and then you can pull out a little loop here to make it more comfortable, whatever your preference is. But we will be knitting and stockinette stitch. It is a little bit uncomfortable, this process, but it makes a very beautiful border. And then if you want to learn how to make a beautiful edge so that you can make a border like this, like a straight edge, I do have another video explaining how to do that and walking you through it. So I'm just going to pull out a little loop here so that I can work this part of the stitches, and then I'll move on to some more. This will just make it a little bit more comfortable for me to knit. And then basically you want to pull the tail, so this one's tight. You just do a stitch like that. Yeah, just do whatever is comfortable for you. You can pull out loops in different spots. You could even pull out this needle fully if it's comfortable for you. It's going to create this beautiful looking braid. You could also use the same color, like for example, if you wanted it green, you could use the same exact yarn, just use smaller needles than what your work was made with. In this case, I'm using the same exact size needles that my work was made with, and my yarn is thinner, so it's creating this smaller look, even though I didn't switch my needles. See? So your work will start to look like this. I found that folding your hat inside out kind of helps with the tension and all of that. And then one thing to note is you kind of have to work around the straps if you have straps on your project. So like here, since counting the cast on row, I'm gonna have 8. I'm gonna do 4 and then go around this one and go behind it 4 to kind of make the border and kind of have this come out in the middle of the border. I'll show you guys what it looks like, but that way it's kind of worked into the work really beautifully. And feel free to do more than 8 rows depending on the thickness of your yarn and the size of your needles and the yarn you use. 8 rows might be too much for you depending on the kind that you work, yarn that you kind of work with, or it might be too little. So you can kind of see how it looks over if it kind of folds over to this end here. and then that would be a good indicator of when you should stop. Okay, so we are back. I have done 4 rows, and this is how your work should look. It gets a lot easier to knit the more rows that you do. And again, this is about halfway for me. If you need to do more, you can, but this is what it should look like. So this is the back here, and I've already started on my 5th row. So you complete 4 or halfway, and then on the 5th row, I'm coming up on this ear flap here where I want to tuck this chin strap or whatever you want to call this within the border. So I'm going to knit behind it on row 5. So I've been knitting in front of it for 4 rows, and then we're gonna go behind it on the 5th row, and I will show you guys what it looks like. And you can kind of choose a good spot for it to kind of fit. I'm gonna go like right here. It is a little bit awkward for me to have a camera right in front of my face, so I'm kind of looking at it at an angle. It's a little bit harder to knit when there's a weird angle. Oops, that one needs to be fixed. Okay, so now I'm at the spot where I want to pull the strap in, and then I just pull it forward and I keep going. Move down stitches. That way we're kind of going around it, and it will be in the fold. So it'll look a lot better, and I'll show you guys what it looks like at the very end. But yeah, that's what you do. So I'm on the 5th row. I'm gonna knit for 8 rows, and then I'll show you guys the final step of what we have to do to complete the border. All right, so we finished 8 rows, and this is what you should expect it to look like. And now we are just going to connect and fold the border like this. I finished my 8th row, so I'm gonna just pull out this needle because I don't need that one. Okay, so basically we are gonna do something similar to what we did in the beginning when we were casting on. You'll be poking through the front of each stitch and going through. So going through this side, you'll grab a stitch off the needle, and then the thread, not the tail, the thread, you're gonna hook on to that thread and pull through. So we're gonna do another one. Go to this one, make sure you come out on the other side where you're supposed to. Like that. Then we grab a stitch off the needle, wrap it with the yarn, pull through, and now you just slip it through that one, like that. And that's called a slip stitch in crochet. Okay. Now we're gonna go into the next one. Make sure you come out on the right side. That way you have a good line, straight line. Hook off the stitch, grab it with the other yarn, pull it through. Okay. I'm just gonna do a few of them and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. This is what it should look like. You don't want to do too tight of a braid here because it's going to restrict the stretch. You just want to make it consistent. You don't want to make it too tight, like that. All right, so this is the finished look here. I just have to weave in the ends, but it turned out really good. Okay, this is my beautiful little girl, Mochi, my little model. This hat is probably gonna fit her sister, Pepper, better, but Pepper is not available right now. Look how cute you are. Oh my gosh. Yeah, she has a smaller head than Pepper. Are you just the littlest girl? Are you cozy?